The champagne glass slipped from my cousin Sarah's hand when she saw me walk through the mahogany doors of the Riverside Country Club. The crystal shattered against the marble floor, sending tiny fragments across the polished surface like scattered stars. The sound cut through the gentle murmur of conversation, and for a moment, the entire ballroom fell silent. "What is she doing here?" Sarah whispered to my Aunt Margaret, her voice carrying farther than she intended. The question hung in the air like smoke from the candles flickering on each elegantly dressed table. I stood in the doorway wearing the navy dress I'd bought specifically for tonight, simple, elegant, nothing that would draw attention away from the cause we were all supposedly here to support. The Children's Hospital Foundation fundraiser, the same hospital where I'd spent 3 months as a child, fighting pneumonia while my family visited twice. My father spotted me first. His face drained of color, and he immediately turned his back, engaging in animated conversation with a man I didn't recognize. My mother followed his lead, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured emphatically as if the intensity of her conversation could make me disappear. "You're not part of this family." The words came from my brother David, delivered with the same cold precision he used in his law practice. He'd approached me while I stood frozen near the entrance, guests flowing around us like water around stones. "This is a private family event." I looked into his eyes, the same green eyes we'd inherited from our grandmother, and saw nothing. No recognition of the sister who'd helped him with his homework. No memory of the girl who'd covered for him when he snuck out to see his girlfriend. Nothing. "I received an invitation," I said quietly, reaching into my purse to show him the embossed card that had arrived at my apartment 3 weeks ago. He barely glanced at it. "Mistake. You shouldn't be here." The conversations around us had resumed, but I could feel the weight of curious glances. The Whitmore family drama playing out in public once again. Some guests pretended not to notice, while others whispered behind their hands, their eyes bright with the anticipation of scandal. My sister Emma appeared at David's side, her red hair perfectly styled, her smile as sharp as broken glass. "David's right. This is awkward for everyone." She looked me up and down, taking in my modest dress, my simple jewelry. "Especially you." I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to ask why my own family treated me like a stranger, but the words caught in my throat like thorns. Instead, I stood there, feeling the familiar weight of exclusion settle over my shoulders like a heavy coat. The ballroom was beautiful, cream-colored walls adorned with oil paintings, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in white linen. Fresh roses filled the air with their sweet fragrance. It was the kind of elegant gathering my family excelled at, the kind where appearances mattered more than truth. "Maybe you should leave," Emma said, her voice softer now but no less cutting. Before this gets uncomfortable. As if my mere presence was the source of discomfort, not their cruelty. I looked around the room one more time, at the family that had raised me, then cast me aside when I'd chosen a different path, when I'd become a teacher instead of a lawyer, when I'd married for love instead of status, when I'd refused to pretend that money could buy forgiveness for their years of neglect. The host's voice crackled over the microphone, welcoming everyone to the evening's festivities. I couldn't see him from where I stood, but his words carried clearly across the room. "We're here tonight to support the Children's Hospital Foundation, and we're grateful to everyone who's made this evening possible." I turned toward the exit, my heels clicking against the marble floor. But something made me pause. Something in the host's tone, a warmth that seemed genuine in a room full of practiced smiles. David and Emma had already moved away, rejoining the family circle near the bar. They stood with their backs to me, a wall of expensive fabric and inherited jewelry, shutting me out as they had for the past 5 years. The weight of their rejection settled in my chest like a stone. I found myself standing alone near the code check, watching my family from across the room. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, air-kissing acquaintances, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, playing the roles they'd perfected over decades of social gatherings. The rain had started while I'd been inside, and I could hear it tapping against the tall windows that lined the ballroom's east wall. The sound was gentle but persistent, like fingers drumming against glass. I thought about leaving, about walking out into that rain and letting it wash away the sting of their words. But I didn't move. Instead, I watched my mother accept compliments on her emerald necklace, the one that had belonged to my grandmother, the one that should have been mine. I watched my father shake hands with the mayor, his smile never wavering, his charm as polished as his cufflinks. I watched David and Emma hold court near the silent auction table, their voices carrying over the soft jazz music that floated through the room. They looked happy, complete, as if nothing was missing from their perfect family portrait. A server approached with a tray of champagne, and I accepted a glass with a quiet thank you. The bubbles rose to the surface in tiny, desperate streams, and I found myself thinking about drowning, about what it felt like to go under and have no one notice you were gone. "Excuse me, are you all right?" I turned to find an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. She wore a simple black dress and a string of pearls that looked real but not ostentatious. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed me with its slight tremor. "I'm Margaret Chen," she said, extending her hand. "I'm on the hospital board. I couldn't help but notice you seem a bit overwhelmed." I shook her hand, surprised by the warmth of her grip. "It's just, family gatherings can be complicated." She nodded knowingly. "The most complicated relationships are often with the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally." She paused, studying my face. "You have the look of someone who gives more than she receives." The observation was so accurate it made my chest tight. I took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles burn slightly on my tongue. "I should probably go," I said. "I don't think I belong here. Belonging isn't about what others think," Margaret said gently. "It's about what you contribute to the world." Before I could respond, she'd melted back into the crowd, leaving me with her words echoing in my mind. I moved to one of the windows and pressed my palm against the cool glass. The rain was coming down harder now, creating rivulets that caught the light from the chandeliers. In the reflection, I could see the party continuing behind me, a tableau of wealth and social grace that I'd once been part of. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from my friend Lisa. "How's the fancy family party? Are you having fun?" I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "It's exactly what I expected." The truth was more complicated. I'd hoped, despite everything, that seeing me might soften something in them, that 5 years of silence might have created space for forgiveness, or at least acknowledgement. Instead, their rejection felt as fresh and sharp as the day I'd walked out of my father's office after our final argument. "You're choosing to throw away everything we've built," he'd said then. "Don't expect us to catch you when you fall." I hadn't fallen. I'd built a life small but meaningful. I taught 3rd grade at an inner-city school. I volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. I'd married James, a carpenter who made me laugh and never once asked me to be anyone other than who I was. But standing here, surrounded by the opulence I'd grown up with, I felt the old familiar ache of not being enough, of being the daughter who disappointed them by choosing love over legacy, purpose over profit. The host's voice came over the microphone again, asking everyone to take their seats for dinner. I watched my family move toward their table, the one near the front, of course, where everyone could see them, where they could see everyone. I remained by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass like tears. The dinner service began with the soft clink of silverware against china, a symphony of privilege that I'd grown up hearing but never quite belonging to. I found myself seated at a table near the back, surrounded by strangers who made polite conversation about the weather, their children's schools, their upcoming vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. "Are you enjoying the salmon?" asked the woman to my left, a blonde in her 50s whose diamond tennis bracelet caught the light every time she lifted her fork. "It's lovely," I replied, though I'd barely touched my food. My appetite had vanished the moment David told me I wasn't part of the family. From my seat, I had a clear view of my family's table. They were animated, laughing at something my father had said, their faces glowing in the warm candlelight. My mother leaned over to whisper something to Emma, and they both looked in my direction before quickly turning away. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, and I found myself counting the droplets as they raced each other down the glass. It was easier than watching my family pretend I didn't exist. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host's voice filled the room again, Before we continue with our program, I'd like to share something special with you. I looked toward the stage where a distinguished man in his 60s stood behind the podium. He had gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Something about him seemed familiar, though I couldn't place where I might have seen him before. The Children's Hospital Foundation has been close to my heart for many years, he continued, his voice carrying easily through the room. As someone who spent time there as a child, I understand firsthand the difference this institution makes in young lives. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. I found myself listening more intently, drawn by the genuine emotion in his voice. Tonight, we're here because of the generosity of many people. But I want to take a moment to recognize someone whose contribution has made this entire evening possible. My family straightened in their seats, my father adjusting his tie with the practiced motion of someone accustomed to recognition. My mother's hand went to her necklace, and Emma smoothed her hair. 5 years ago, I received an anonymous donation that changed everything for our foundation. It wasn't just the amount, though it was substantial, it was the letter that came with it. The host reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Even from my distant table, I could see it was worn, as if it had been read many times. The donor wrote, "I'm giving this money in memory of all the children who spend their holidays in hospital beds, and in honor of the nurses who become their temporary families. Please use it to make sure no child feels forgotten." My breath caught in my throat. Those words, I knew those words because I had written them. That donation allowed us to expand our family support program, to hire additional child life specialists, and to create the comfort rooms where parents can rest while their children receive treatment. The room was completely silent now, everyone hanging on his words. Even the servers had stopped moving, standing still with their trays as if frozen in time. For 5 years, I've wondered about the person behind this gift. Someone who understood that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about making sure no one faces their darkest moments alone. My hands were shaking. I set down my water glass carefully, afraid I might drop it. Tonight, I finally have the chance to thank her in person. The host's eyes scanned the room, and I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. This couldn't be happening. The donation had been anonymous. I'd made sure of that. The donor requested anonymity, but circumstances have brought us together this evening, and I hope she'll forgive me for breaking that confidence. I could feel eyes turning toward me, though I couldn't understand how anyone knew. The host's gaze found mine across the crowded room, and he smiled a warm, genuine smile that made my chest tight with emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in thanking our primary sponsor, the woman whose generosity made tonight possible. The words hung in the air like a held breath. I could see my family's table from the corner of my eye, could see the confusion on their faces as they tried to understand what was happening. Miss Sarah Elizabeth Whitmore. The sound of my name, my full name, echoed through the ballroom like a bell. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the applause began. The applause started as a gentle ripple, uncertain and scattered, then grew into something powerful and sustained. I sat frozen in my chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table as hundreds of eyes turned toward me. The sound seemed to come from very far away, as if I were underwater and the clapping was happening on the surface above. "Please," the host said, his voice warm with genuine affection. "Would you join me on stage?" I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of lead, my chest tight with a mixture of panic and something else, something I couldn't quite name. The applause continued, growing stronger, and I could hear individual voices calling out encouragement. "Go on, dear," whispered the woman beside me, the one with the diamond bracelet. Her eyes were bright with tears. "That was beautiful, what you did." Somehow, I found myself standing. My legs carried me forward through the maze of tables, past faces I didn't recognize but that looked at me with something I'd almost forgotten: respect, admiration. The kind of recognition I'd never received from the people who mattered most. As I walked toward the stage, I caught glimpses of my family's table. My father sat rigid, his face pale as marble. My mother's hand was pressed to her throat, her mouth slightly open in shock. David and Emma stared at me as if I were a stranger, which I supposed I was. The host, Dr. Michael Harrison, according to the program I'd barely glanced at, met me at the steps to the stage. He took my hand in both of his, and I could feel the warmth of his gratitude radiating through his touch. "Thank you," he said quietly, "meant only for me. You have no idea how many lives you've changed." The microphone felt foreign in my hand as I stood before the crowd. The lights were brighter up here, making it difficult to see individual faces, but I could feel the weight of their attention like a physical presence. I began, then stopped. My voice sounded strange, amplified and echoing in the large room. I never expected this. A gentle laugh rippled through the audience, encouraging and kind. 5 years ago, I was angry. I continued, the words coming easier now. I'd been hurt by people I loved, and I wanted to do something that mattered, something that would help children who felt as alone as I did. The silence in the room was complete now, broken only by the soft patter of rain against the windows. I gave that money because I remembered what it felt like to be 8 years old and sick and scared, lying in a hospital bed while my family was too busy to visit. I remembered the night nurse who brought me hot chocolate and sat with me during a thunderstorm. I remembered thinking that if I ever had the chance to make sure another child didn't feel that forgotten, I would take it. I could see my family's table clearly now. My mother had tears streaming down her cheeks, her carefully applied makeup beginning to smudge. My father's hands were clenched in his lap, his knuckles white. David and Emma sat perfectly still, as if any movement might shatter something fragile and irreplaceable. "The money came from my inheritance," I said, my voice growing stronger. "From my grandmother, who taught me that love isn't about what you keep, it's about what you give away." Dr. Harrison stepped forward, his own eyes bright with emotion. "Sarah's donation didn't just fund programs," he told the audience. "It funded hope. It funded healing. It funded the radical idea that every child deserves to feel valued and loved, especially when they're fighting for their lives." The applause erupted again, but this time I barely heard it. I was looking at my family, seeing something in their faces I'd never seen before. Recognition, not just of who I was, but of who I'd become. My mother stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Then my father. Then David and Emma. One by one, they rose to their feet, their applause joining the thunderous appreciation that filled the room. But it was too late for their approval to matter the way it once had. I handed the microphone back to Dr. Harrison and walked down the steps, through the crowd that parted before me like water. Hands reached out to touch my arm, voices called out thanks and congratulations, but I moved through it all in a kind of dream state. The rain had stopped while I'd been on stage, and through the windows, I could see the first stars beginning to appear in the clearing sky. I made it halfway across the ballroom before my mother intercepted me. She moved with the same grace she'd always possessed, but there was something different in her posture, a hesitation I'd never seen before. Her makeup was smudged from tears, and for the first time in years, she looked her age. "Sarah." My name came out as barely a whisper. "We need to talk." I stopped walking but didn't turn to face her completely. Around us, the party continued, but I could feel the weight of curious glances from other guests. The Whitmore family drama was far from over. "Do we?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "That money," she said, stepping closer. "That was your grandmother's inheritance. All of it?" I finally turned to look at her. "Does it matter? You gave away $2 million. Her voice cracked on the number. "To strangers, to children who needed it more than I did." My father appeared at her side, his face a careful mask of composure, but I could see the storm behind his eyes. "Sarah, we should discuss this privately. Like we discussed my marriage privately? Or my career choice? Or the way you cut me out of your lives?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't regret them. David and Emma had joined them now, forming a semicircle around me. The family unit, closing ranks as they always did when faced with something they couldn't control. "We made mistakes," Emma said quietly, "but you could have talked to us. You could have. I tried." The interruption hung between us like a blade. For months after James and I got engaged, I tried. I called. I sent letters. I showed up at Sunday dinners until you made it clear I wasn't welcome. "You chose him over us," David said, his lawyer's voice emerging. "You chose a life we couldn't understand. I chose love over money. I chose purpose over prestige." And you couldn't forgive me for it. The silence stretched between us, filled with 5 years of unspoken hurt and stubborn pride. Around us, the fundraiser continued, but we existed in our own bubble of family dysfunction. The inheritance was supposed to secure your future, my father said finally. Your grandmother wanted you to be taken care of. I'm taken care of. I looked at each of them in turn. I have a husband who loves me for who I am, not what I can give him. I have students who light up when they see me. I have a life that matters. And apparently, my mother said, her voice thick with emotion, you have the gratitude of hundreds of families we'll never meet. Dr. Harrison's voice carried across the room as he continued the program, sharing stories of children who had benefited from the foundation's expanded services. Stories of healing and hope that my money had helped make possible. I didn't do it for recognition, I said. I did it because it was right. We know, my father said, and for the first time in years, his voice held no judgment. That's what makes it so. He didn't finish the sentence, but I could see the word in his eyes. Humbling. I should go, I said, glancing toward the exit. James is picking me up in 20 minutes. James, my mother repeated, as if testing the name. Your husband. Yes, my husband. The men you refused to meet. The weight of their rejection settled over us again, but this time it felt different. Less sharp, more like sadness than anger. We'd like to meet him, Emma said suddenly. If you'd let us. I studied her face, looking for the trap, the condition, the way this offer would be used against me later. But all I saw was my sister, older now, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. Why now? I asked. Because, my mother said, reaching out to touch my arm with trembling fingers, we just realize we don't know who you are anymore. And tonight, watching you up there, seeing what you've done, we realize we want to. The touch of her hand was electric, carrying 5 years of missed birthdays and holidays, of phone calls that went unanswered and invitations that never came, but also carrying something new, the possibility of a bridge across the chasm we'd all helped create. I need time, I said, not pulling away from her touch, but not leaning into it either. Of course, my father said, we understand. But I wasn't sure they did. I wasn't sure any of us understood what came next. Through the windows, I could see headlights in the parking lot. James, arriving exactly when he'd promised, the way he always did. Reliable in a way that had nothing to do with money or status and everything to do with love. That's my ride, I said. They stepped back, creating a path for me to leave. But I could feel their eyes following me as I walked toward the exit. At the coat check, I retrieved my simple black wrap, so different from the first stoles and designer coats that hung beside it. As I reached the door, I heard my name called one more time. I turned to see Dr. Harrison approaching, his face bright with genuine warmth. I hope you don't mind that I revealed your identity, he said. But after 5 years of wondering, when I saw your name on the guest list, how did you know it was me? He smiled. Your grandmother. She was on our board for 20 years before she passed. She used to tell us about her granddaughter who was going to change the world, one child at a time. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My grandmother had known. She'd known what I would do with the money, had perhaps even hoped for it. She would be proud, Dr. Harrison continued, of the woman you've become, and of what you've accomplished tonight. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and pushed through the doors into the cool night air. The night air was crisp and clean, washed fresh by the rain that had stopped while I was inside. I stood on the steps of the country club, breathing deeply and letting the coolness fill my lungs. The parking lot stretched before me, dotted with expensive cars that gleamed under the streetlights like sleeping beasts. James's pickup truck looked humble among the Mercedes and BMWs, but when I saw his familiar silhouette behind the wheel, something tight in my chest finally loosened. He got out as I approached, his face creased with concern. How was it? He asked, opening the passenger door for me with the same gentle courtesy he'd shown since our first date. Complicated, I said, settling into the worn leather seat that had molded itself to my body over the years. The truck smelled like sawdust and coffee, like home. As we pulled away from the country club, I watched a building grow smaller in the side mirror. Through the tall windows, I could see the party continuing, elegant figures moving through pools of golden light, the fundraiser proceeding as planned. My family was still in there, probably trying to process what had just happened. "Want to talk about it?" James asked, his voice gentle. I told him everything as we drove through the quiet streets. About the cold reception, about Dr. Harrison's revelation, about standing on that stage feeling more exposed than I'd ever felt in my life. About my family's faces when they realized what I'd done with my inheritance. $2 million, James said when I finished. He wasn't shocked we'd talked about my grandmother's money before, about my decision to give it away. But hearing it announced in public had given it a weight it hadn't possessed in our private conversations. "Do you think I was wrong?" I asked. "To give it all away?" He was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Do you remember what you told me the night we decided to get married?" I did remember. We'd been sitting on his back porch, watching fireflies dance in the summer darkness. I said I wanted to build a life that mattered. "And have you?" I thought about my students, Marcus, who'd finally learned to read after struggling for 2 years. Sophia, who'd stopped flinching when adults raised their voices. Tommy, who'd started bringing me drawings of his family that included me. I thought about the children in the hospital who would have comfort rooms because of my donation, who would have child life specialists to help them through their darkest moments. "Yes," I said, "I have." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, through neighborhoods where porch lights glowed like beacons and families were settling in for the night. Normal people living normal lives, finding joy in simple things. "Your phone's been buzzing," James said. I looked down to see several missed calls and text messages. My mother, Emma, even David, and one from a number I didn't recognize. The unknown number had sent a picture of me on stage, taken from somewhere in the audience. I looked small up there, dwarfed by the grandeur of the ballroom, but there was something in my posture that surprised me. Strength, dignity, the bearing of someone who belonged exactly where she was. The message below the photo read, "Thank you for giving my daughter hope when she needed it most." A grateful parent, I showed the message to James when we stopped at a red light. He read it, then looked at me with the same expression he'd worn the day I'd told him about the donation, pride mixed with something deeper, something that felt like recognition. "You know what I think?" he said as the light turned green. "What?" "I think your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing when she left you that money." We pulled into our driveway, a modest house on a tree-lined street where children rode bicycles and neighbors knew each other's names. It wasn't the mansion I'd grown up in, but it was ours. We'd painted every room together, planted the garden with our own hands, built a life that fit us perfectly. Inside, our cat Whiskers greeted us with his usual indifferent meow before returning to his perch on the windowsill. The house was quiet and warm, filled with the accumulated comfort of 5 years of marriage. I kicked off my heels and sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. The evening felt like it had lasted a lifetime, each moment stretched and weighted with significance. James sat beside me, pulling me against his side with the easy familiarity of long love. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "They want to meet you. They want to try again. And what do you want?" It was the question I'd been avoiding all evening. What did I want? For 5 years, I'd built a life without them. Learned to find validation in my work and my marriage rather than in their approval. I'd thought I was past needing their acceptance. But standing on that stage tonight, seeing the shock in something that might have been pride in their faces, I'd felt the old longing stir, the desire to belong to the family that had shaped me, even if they'd also wounded me. "I want to be careful," I said finally. "I want to protect what we've built here." James pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "We'll figure it out together, outside." The night was settling into its deepest quiet. The stars that had appeared after the rain were brilliant now, scattered across the sky like promises. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, the slow work of rebuilding trust that had been shattered. But tonight, I was home. Tonight, I was enough. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from my mother. "I'm proud of you." I should have said that years ago. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling something shift inside me like a door opening after being locked for years. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. The grandfather clock in our hallway chimed midnight, marking the end of one day and the start of another. I closed my eyes and listened to James's steady breathing, to the familiar sounds of our house settling around us. In the morning, there would be decisions to make, but for now, there was only this: the quiet satisfaction of a life lived with purpose, the warmth of love freely given and received, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is not what others expect, but what the world truly needs. The morning came too early, announced by sunlight streaming through our bedroom curtains and the persistent buzz of my phone. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying the events of the fundraiser like a film stuck on repeat. James was already up, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen along with the sound of him humming something he only did when he was thinking deeply. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread beyond the fundraiser. Someone had posted the photo of me on stage to social media, and it had been shared hundreds of times overnight. The story was spreading. Teacher gives away $2 million inheritance to Children's Hospital. I scrolled through messages from colleagues, former students, people I hadn't heard from in years. But it was the email from my principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, that made me sit up in bed. "Sarah, I just saw the news. Can we talk? There's something I need to discuss with you." "Elena," the tone was formal, distant. Not like Elena at all. I found James in the kitchen, 2 cups of coffee waiting on the counter. He looked up as I entered, his carpenter's hands wrapped around his mug, his eyes searching my face. "How are you feeling?" he asked, like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "And I'm not sure if I'm about to fly or fall." My phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and I stared at it until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again. This time it was Emma. "You should probably answer," James said gently. I did, putting the call on speaker. "Sarah," Emma's voice was tentative, younger somehow than it had been last night. "Are you there?" "I'm here." I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what you said, about trying to call us, about the letters. Her voice broke slightly. "I found them." "Found what?" "The letters. In Mom's desk drawer. She kept them all. Every single one you sent after your wedding. They're beautiful, Sarah. And we never read them." The coffee cup trembled in my hands. "What do you mean you never read them?" Dad intercepted them. He thought if we ignored you long enough, you'd come back on his terms. He was protecting his pride. And we let him. The revelation hit me like cold water. 5 years of silence, 5 years of believing my family simply didn't care, and they'd never even seen my attempts to reach out. "There's one from your first anniversary," Emma continued, crying now. "You wrote about how happy you were, how you wish we could meet James, how you missed us at your wedding. And one from when you started teaching, about a little girl who reminded you of me when we were kids." I closed my eyes, remembering those letters, the hope I'd poured into each one, the gradual dimming of that hope as months passed without response. "Emma," I said quietly, "why are you telling me this now?" "Because last night, watching you on that stage, I realized we lost you. Not because you chose James over us, but because we chose pride over love. And I can't live with that anymore." James reached across the counter and took my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. "Where's Dad now?" I asked. "In his study. He's been there all night, reading your letters." "Sarah, I've never seen him cry before, but the image of my stoic father weeping over letters he'd hidden for years was almost too much to process. This was the man who'd taught me that emotions were weaknesses, that control was everything. "I need time," I said again, the same words I'd used last night. "I know, but Sarah, that money you gave away, Grandma would have been so proud. She always said you had the biggest heart in the family." After Emma hung up, I sat in the kitchen silence, trying to reconcile this new information with the narrative I'd carried for 5 years. My family hadn't rejected my letters, they'd never seen them. It didn't excuse their behavior at my wedding, their refusal to meet James, their cold shoulders at every encounter since. But it complicated things in ways I wasn't ready to face. "I need to go to school," I said finally. "I need to think, and I think better when I'm working." James nodded. "Want me to drive you?" "No. I need the walk." The 15-minute walk to Roosevelt Elementary had always been my meditation time, but today the familiar route felt different. Neighbors I'd never spoken to waved from their porches. Mrs. Chen from the corner house called out, "Saw you on the news, dear." So proud. By the time I reached a school, I understood that my anonymous donation was anonymous no more. The story had legs, and it was running. Elena Rodriguez was waiting in her office, her usually warm smile replaced by something more complex. She gestured for me to sit, then closed the door, never a good sign. "Sarah, I need you to know that I think what you did was incredible," she began. "But we have a problem." My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? "The school board got calls this morning. Parents asking why a teacher who can afford to give away $2 million is working in a public school. They're questioning your motives, wondering if you're here for the right reasons." The accusation was so absurd it took me a moment to process. They think I'm, what? Slumming it? Some do. Others are worried about publicity, about the school becoming a media circus. And a few board members are concerned about the message it sends that our teachers don't need their salaries. I stared at her, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. "Elena, you know why I teach. You've seen my work with these kids." "I do know, but the board meets tomorrow, and there's talk of placing you on administrative leave while they review the situation." The words hit me like physical blows. Administrative leave, review, the bureaucratic language of professional death. "They can't fire me for giving money to charity," I said, but even as I spoke, I knew they could find ways. Budget cuts, restructuring, the thousand small cruelties that school boards use to remove teachers they found inconvenient. "I'm going to fight for you," Elena said, "but I wanted you to know what we're facing." I walked to my classroom in a daze, past bulletin boards covered with student artwork and motivational posters about reaching for dreams. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd reached for my dreams and might lose everything in the process. My third graders were already at their desks when I arrived, their faces bright with Monday morning energy. Marcus waved enthusiastically. Sophia had drawn me a picture over the weekend, and Tommy bounced in his seat with excitement about something he wanted to share. Looking at them, I felt my resolve crystallize. Whatever happened with my family, whatever the school board decided, these children needed me, and I needed them. "Good morning, class," I said, hanging up my coat and moving to the whiteboard. "Who's ready to learn something amazing today?" 22 hands shot into the air, and for the first time since last night, I smiled genuinely. This was why I taught. This was why I'd given away the money. This was why I'd chosen love over legacy. But as I began the day's lesson, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles were still ahead. The school day passed in a blur of fractions and reading groups, but I could feel the weight of curious glances from other teachers. During lunch, the faculty room fell silent when I entered, conversations stopping mid-sentence before resuming in hushed tones. I ate my sandwich alone, pretending to grade papers while my colleagues whispered about my newfound notoriety. It was Mrs. Patterson, the kindergarten teacher, who finally approached me. She was nearing retirement, her gray hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn for 30 years, her eyes kind but worried. "Sarah, dear," she said, sitting beside me, "I hope you know that some of us think what you did was wonderful. Some of us," I repeated, noting the careful phrasing. She glanced around the room, then leaned closer. "There's been talk. Some people think, well, they think if you had that kind of money, you must come from privilege. They're wondering why you're here, taking a job from someone who might need it more." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I had come from privilege. I had grown up in a world where $2 million was inheritance money, not life-changing wealth. But I'd also chosen to leave that world behind. "I teach because I love it," I said quietly. "Because these kids need advocates." "I know that," Mrs. Patterson said, "but not everyone does." And with the budget cuts coming, she didn't need to finish. In a district where teachers were being laid off and programs cut, a wealthy teacher made an easy target. The afternoon brought another challenge. During recess, I noticed a news van parked across the street from the school. A reporter with perfectly styled hair stood on the sidewalk, speaking into a camera while gesturing toward the building. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Reporters at the house. I'm not answering the door. You okay?" Before I could respond, my principal's voice came over the intercom. "Miss Whitmore, please report to the office. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Students peered out of classroom doors, their teachers quickly pulling them back inside. The newsvan had been spotted, and everyone knew why it was there. Elena's office was crowded when I arrived. 3 school board members sat in chairs that had been hastily arranged, their faces grave. I recognized Dr. Williams, the board president, and Mrs. Foster, who had always been supportive of my work. The third man was new, someone I'd never met. Miss Whitmore, Dr. Williams began, his voice formal. We need to discuss the situation that's developed. What situation? I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. Your donation has created some concerns. Parents are calling, asking questions about your background, your motivations for teaching here. Mrs. Foster leaned forward, her expression sympathetic. Sarah, we know you're an excellent teacher, but we have to consider the district's image, the potential disruption. Disruption? The word came out sharper than I intended. I gave money to help sick children. How is that disruptive? The third board member, who'd introduced himself as Mr. Kellerman, spoke for the first time. Miss Whitmore, the concern isn't about your charitable giving. It's about transparency. Our community expects teachers to be relatable. When someone can afford to give away millions, it raises questions about their connection to our students' struggles. I stared at him, trying to process the logic. So because I help children in need, I can't help the children in my classroom? That's not what we're saying, Dr. Williams interjected quickly. But we think it might be best if you took some time off while this media attention dies down. Administrative leave, I said flatly. Temporary, Mrs. Foster added, just until things settle. I looked around the room at these people who held my career in their hands. They were scared, I realized. Scared of controversy, of difficult questions, of anything that might complicate their carefully managed district. What about my students? I asked. We're in the middle of a unit on fractions. Mark has just started reading chapter books. Sophia is finally participating in group discussions. We'll arrange for a substitute, Dr. Williams said. Someone qualified. But not someone who knew that Marcus needed extra time with word problems because his father had left and he was struggling with abandonment. Not someone who understood that Sophia's silence came from trauma, not defiance. Not someone who had spent 2 years building trust with these children. I need to think about this, I said. We understand, Mrs. Foster said gently, but we need an answer by tomorrow morning. The media attention is only going to grow. I walked back to my classroom feeling numb. Through the windows, I could see the newsvan still parked across the street. Another had joined it. My students were working quietly on their math worksheets when I returned, but I could sense their awareness that something was wrong. Children were intuitive, that way they felt the tension even when they couldn't name it. Miss Whitmore. Marcus raised his hand. Are you sad? The question, asked with such innocent concern, nearly broke me. I'm just thinking about some grown-up things, Marcus. Nothing for you to worry about. But as I looked around the classroom, at the reading corner where we'd spent countless hours exploring new worlds, at the science station where we'd grown plants and studied butterflies, at the walls covered with student work and dreams, I wondered if this might be one of my last days here. After school, I sat alone in my empty classroom, grading papers and trying to make sense of the day. The irony was crushing. I'd given money to help children, and now I might lose my job working with children because of it. My phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen again. This time I answered. Sarah. Her voice was tentative, fragile. I know this isn't a good time, but I needed to hear your voice. It's not a good time, I agreed. I might lose my job because of last night. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of unintended consequences. Because of the donation? She asked finally. Because people think I don't belong in a public school. Because they think I'm playing at being a teacher instead of really being one. But that's ridiculous. You've been teaching for 5 years. You love those children. The defense, coming from her, was unexpected. For so long, she'd questioned my career choice, wondering why I'd waste my education on other people's children. Since when do you care about my teaching? I asked. Another long pause. Since I read your letters, since I realize how wrong we've been about everything. Through the classroom window, I could see parents arriving to pick up their children from after-school care. Normal families living normal lives, unaware that their children's teacher was sitting in the dark, wondering if her world was falling apart. "Mom," I said quietly, "I can't do this right now. I can't handle a family reconciliation and a career crisis at the same time. I understand. But Sarah, whatever happens, whatever they tried to take from you, remember that you changed lives last night. Not just the children in that hospital, but all of us who were there to see it." After she hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the sounds of the school settling around me. Somewhere in the building, a janitor was working, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. Outside, the news vans waited like vultures. I thought about my grandmother, about the woman who'd left me a fortune and trusted me to use it wisely. I thought about the children in the hospital who would benefit from my donation, and the children in my classroom who might lose their teacher because of it. The choice I'd made had seemed so clear 5 years ago. Give the money to those who needed it most. But I was beginning to understand that every choice carried consequences, and some consequences took years to reveal themselves. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Coming to get you. Don't walk home alone with the reporters around." I gathered my things and turned off the lights, leaving my classroom the way I always did, ready for tomorrow, even though I wasn't sure I'd be there to see it. In the parking lot, James was waiting in his truck, his face grim with concern. As I climbed into the passenger seat, I could see the news vans following us, their headlights cutting through the growing dusk like searchlights hunting for prey. "How bad is it?" he asked as we drove away. "Bad," I said. "They want me to take administrative leave." He was quiet for a moment, processing this. "What are you going to do?" I looked out the window at the familiar streets, at the neighborhood where I'd built a life that mattered. Tomorrow, I would have to decide whether to fight for my job or walk away with whatever dignity I had left. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know I can't let them make me regret helping those children." As we turned onto our street, I could see more news vans parked outside our house, reporters waiting on our lawn like unwelcome guests who refused to leave. The price of doing good, I was learning, was sometimes higher than anyone expected to pay.